What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarych, and it feels like a little bit like the end of an era feels too big, but an end of a pretty significant period of time here with Agatha All Along done, and now talking about the Penguin episode 8, the season finale, maybe series finale, maybe season finale. We don't know for sure yet, but an incredible series. And now we have about a month to just kind of chill, hang out, do some drafts, do some news breakdowns, play some games before we are into our next set of coverage. I'm TJ Zwarych. I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Damon Gray. How you doing today, Damon?
Fantastic. I'm doing all right. Cold. It's getting cold here finally. Although I say that, and it's like 70 degrees outside because it's not really getting cold, but I'm telling myself it's getting cold just because it's like I need some sense of normalcy in the world.
We're at about 40 degrees right now, and so it's starting to get cold here, but usually by like last week in October, we already have our first snowfall, and we are still awaiting it right now. So not quite normalcy, but there's a lot of things feeling like the world is burning a little bit, but at the same time, we are just gonna focus in on the things that make us happy, the content that makes us happy, do some nerd stuff with our friends, as our pal Fat Thor likes to say. But let's talk about the Penguin, because this has been an incredible series of television. And I always forgot because we weren't doing it for the live shows. But before the Penguin, let's do Whatcha Watchin. We'll talk about the Penguin. We've got lots of time. But what are the other things in your life you're watching, reading, playing right now to bring you some enjoyment? We talked about how you're busy as hell right now. And I feel that. I have been too. So what have you been able to mix in to find some enjoyment?
Yeah, so not so many television shows for me or movies in particular, but as you know, I do the comic corner here on the Agents Fandom, where we talk and read all about comics. So the Absolute books from DC have been fantastic. Last week we just had Absolute Superman that dropped, and DC is 3 for 3 on their Absolute books. We're all in on it over on the Comic Corner. They are fantastic. Absolute Superman hits hard. It's a much different take on not Clark Kent, on Kal-El. And it's very cool. It's very cool. Definitely check it out. But outside of that, like I said, not so many television shows. Been doing a lot of music shows. Just going to the city, anywhere local, anything I can find to just go get away and enjoy some music. So shout out bands like The Funeral Portrait, Not Long Enough, great, like fantastic bands, Senses as well. So go support your local music scenes whenever you can.
Couldn't agree more. I want to talk a little more about Absolute Superman before I move on to what I've been watching, because the Absolute Universe gives like little twists or big twists on these characters. Diana, Wonder Woman, instead of being raised in Themyscira, she's raised in hell. Batman and Bruce Wayne, he's not rich. He's not, typical Batman physique. He's gigantic. He's
6'6", baby. He's a 6'6" behemoth.
What do we have as our kind of core differences for Absolute Superman?
So Absolute Superman is a drastic change because Kal-El, the son of Jor-El, is from the working class. Jor-El is not a part of the League of Scientists. They refuse to listen to him. He is not a part of it. He is a part of the working class. The symbol, the Superman symbol that we all associate with the House of El, symbol of hope, is actually a Kryptonian symbol for the working class. It is for those who are almost deemed lesser. That is the biggest change. And also a secondary change, slight spoiler, but absolutely still read this book. He was on Krypton when it exploded, or just went away. I don't even know if we don't even know if it exploded yet. We know Krypton's about to have something happen to it, but he remembers Krypton. That is a huge change. So in that regard, he is closer to almost a Supergirl, Akara, than he is to our traditional Kal-El.
I like it. Interesting differences. That was my first thought as well when you were explaining it, is a little Kara-esque in that one. So I like it. Check out Absolute Superman and check out the Comic Corner as well, because Damon and Fat Thor and AF and the whole crew, they break those comics down. They talk to some of the creators. It's really awesome. So make sure you follow the Agents of Fandom on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our content here on the pod, but also on the Comic Corner podcast as well. And hit the like button, smash the notification bell, do all those great things. Let's build this community. Let's grow. We want to battle the YouTube algorithm, and that's how we do it, by you hitting the like button. Gets us in front of more people, more eyes. I finished Legend of Korra, and I went right back into Avatar again. Like, really,
Just looping around.
It's just like, it's the best comfort show, especially right now where we talk about where we feel like the world is burning, and it like literally is in season 1, 2, and 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but we remain hopeful, and it does just feel like a really great show to have on in the background right now, put on before you go to sleep. I've been playing Dragon Age Veilguard for PS5. That's been a lot of fun so far. Very Witcher-esque for me, role-playing game. You get to make different choices. The fighting is quite similar. A little bit of magic, a little bit of swordplay, but you get a team behind you. You get to assemble a little bit of a team and work with them, almost in like where you're controlling one character, but you can also add on attacks of the various characters, like the Guardians of the Galaxy game for PS5. So that one has been really fun so far. Interesting story. We're taking down the elven gods. That has been fun. And then can't remember really anything else I've been watching or doing other than sports, because it's been work all the time lately. And so gonna take a little break, probably start switching into the holiday type projects pretty soon here. But November is just kind of like a month of chill and transition for me right now, I think. But let's talk about the Batman, the Penguin, because we'll talk a little bit about the Batman within the Penguin. Talk about the Penguin episode 8 and the series as a whole, because I truly think I'm on board that this is the best television show of 2024. What did you think of the Penguin as a whole so far?
I think it's definitely up there. I think it's definitely, I really have to like sit down and think about what shows really truly came out this year, but I think it's definitely up there. Man, what a show. What a show. Just quality. I mean, we joked about it since we did the first episode of this. It was like, oh, this is like DC does Sopranos. And yeah, it's like DC does Sopranos, and they did it really freaking good, man. Oh, you like, we'll get into it more, but there is truly not a good character in the show, and I mean good from like they're a good person, because everyone in here kind of sucks a little bit. But the fact that you may still find the ability to root for everyone, at least in the tiniest little bit of capacity, just shows how quality the writing, the cinematography, just the overall excellence of this show is. Hats off, because this took a little bit to get there, if I remember correctly. Like, we're like waiting for this show to come out, and I don't know if it ever had like a ton of reshoots or just waiting for the right time, but man, did they nail it? Did they nail it with this show?
Couldn't agree more. Knocked it absolutely out of the park. It started pretty strong, and it got better and better and better and better with each and every week. And then the finale was probably the best episode of the entire series. Looking into some of the top shows of 2024 so far, the one that I think probably takes the cake as the quote unquote top show is Shogun, which I kind of think of as 2023 because, you know, it didn't, because of the weird Emmy scheduling has been over the last couple years due to the strike. And so I think, like, I personally, I'm not going to say that the Penguin is just objectively better than Shogun. I enjoyed it more. But let us know in the comments and on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else, what you think the best show of 2024 was. And also let us know your favorite show of 2024, because those are different things. What you think is the best, the highest quality, and your favorite can be two totally different things. But we've had lots of great shows this year. The Penguin, Acolyte, Batman Caped Crusader, The Acolyte, Agatha All Along. Did I say the Acolyte twice? I might
You
have.
did say the Acolyte twice.
I loved it, and I know some people are probably going to get in there and be like, "Oh, it was terrible." Guess what? I loved it. Echo came out this year,
It
and
did
then
come
tons
out
of other
this
shows.
year.
Fallout
Oh,
came out
X-Men
this year.
97. I don't know if we shouted
X-Men
that one out.
97, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Within and outside the genre that we usually cover, a lot of really, really strong television shows this year. I want to take you to the next question, though, and that is, if we know this ranks among the best this year, let us know where you think it ranks officially. For me, I think it's the number one, but let us know what you think. Where do you think this ranks among comic book television shows? Because we talked about, we got some great ones this year, especially in the animated realm with Batman Cape Crusader and how am I just blanking on the other one? You literally just X-Men 97.
Yeah.
We've gotten some really good animated television shows this year, but where does this, let's say among live action comic book television, what, if not in a number ranking, what are the shows that this stacks up with for you from a quality standpoint? My very first thought from a genre and quality standpoint goes right to Daredevil, the first season of the Netflix Daredevil show, in terms of quality, enjoyment, and genre. What do you think?
Watchmen, definitely comparable, right? Because like we mentioned, there was a difference between favorites and best. We talked about that when we did our Star Wars shows rankings, right? There was a difference between favorite and best, because Andor had been the best Star Wars show ever, period, hands down, but it may not be some people's favorite. Man, it's just been, it's so good. This show, I just cannot praise it enough, honestly. And I don't know where I would rank it personally, just because of the rewatchability in the end. I don't know if I'm going to sit down and be like, I'm going to rewatch all 8 episodes of The Penguin, right? It's almost one of the reasons why, like, I find I have to sit down, almost plan out my day. Like, if I'm going to rewatch The Batman, I have to chuck out like 3 hours in my day for that. That's not a show you can just sit down and watch a few episodes like you've been doing with like Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? So it's not something you can kind of put on in the background and watch. From a quality point of view, I think this is definitely up there, and at least in debate for the best comic book show ever. At least in conversation.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And I do think the biggest knock on it, which is a great point because I hadn't even considered it, is the rewatchability aspect. This is never which isn't a knock on a show in general when you're looking at great week to week HBO television. But when you're looking at it, comparing it to the all time greats, the very best, I do think that is a little bit of a knock on it for me because, I can't imagine really wanting to rewatch this. Maybe as a recap before the Batman Part 2 comes out.
Sure.
But I don't feel like, from an enjoyment standpoint, this is something I need to rewatch. So I think that's a very good point. But having said that, I agree with you. It's in the conversation for the best comic book television shows of all time, especially in live action. You throw in animated, and there is some really, really, really incredible stuff that gets difficult to rank among live action shows. But among the live action, I definitely think it's up top. Episode 8, I think, is the best one of the entire series. The way it started, the way it finished, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. What I love about this series as a whole is I never know what's coming next. And to me, that element, that thought process was just personified incredibly in episode 8. It just, at no point did I know what was going to be happening next. And you find the way it concludes, which we'll get to at the end, I think was just chef's kiss, beautiful. It was my favorite episode of the series. What did you think of episode 8 of The Penguin?
Second favorite episode. Sofia's episode 4 still takes the cake. I'm a sucker for those types of stories, and the way they executed that one in particular was just a 10 out of 10. And you know me, I'm a very strict grader when it comes to many things. that was an actual 10 out of 10 episode. This is like closer to like a 9.5 and 9.8, like very, very, very close, but it just didn't reach that level. But in the end, we're comparing like little pebbles, rices, like little grains of rice at that point, right? It was an excellent episode. Like you said, had me at the edge of my seat, constantly guessing which direction we were going to go in a lot of different facets, and they nailed it. They just nailed it.
One of the things that I loved so much about this episode and our conversation on the show last week, we had Jamie Zwarych back on the podcast to talk about episode 7. And one of the most fun conversations for me, which I couldn't really partake in because I had seen the episode, but just I got to ask Jamie the questions and get her thoughts, was on how much Frances Cobb, how much she knew throughout her life about what her son Oz did that day when his brothers and her sons lost their lives. And turns out a whole lot. The Frances flashback of this episode was really good. We talked last week with Jamie about how Oz has been a little bit of an unreliable narrator throughout the course of this throughout this season. And you don't really realize it at the beginning, but when he says things like, there's this guy in my neighborhood, Rex. I'm not going to try and do the New York accent. I'm terrible at it. But Rex is, he talked about him as this benevolent leader in the neighborhood who always made sure everyone had what they needed. And you see in his flashback, that is very much just his childhood perspective that he has never let go of. Doesn't quite look that way for the other people, and his older brother knew it. And now we see the same flashback, but of what he viewed their time in Monroe's, the club, which is where Sofia gets Oz to come to meet them. In his mind, in Oz's mind, that was such a happy, positive flashback of a time he got to spend with his mom, just him and his mom, in the weird, messed up. Oh, I forgot you came halfway through the Penguin conversation last time, so you were there for the unreliable narrator stuff. My apologies. But his weird little messed up relationship with his mom that he wants, it's a very happy memory for him. We see it from Frances's perspective, totally different.
Yeah, she had to deal with a lot and that, and that's something that I think you asked me, and I said I feel like she knew the whole time but couldn't accept it. And you got a bit of that. Like, she absolutely knew days after, like she knew. And I still don't know if she even accepted it or was just doing it almost so she could just stay alive at that point, because she knew that, in my opinion, like, she knows that her son is a sociopath and really had like no feelings for anything. He kept trying to say like, oh, I do have like, I care for my mom. I care for my mom. It's like, but as like this whole interrogation is going on with Sofia, he never cared. He clearly never cared. He was about to let Sofia's goons cut off his mom's pinky. He was going to let that happen. Like, straight up, he was going to let that happen. That is how much of a pathological liar, a sociopath that this Oz Cobb is. And just how like despicable of a character he is, because you think like deep down inside, like maybe he really does care. Like, we've been with him now, this is our 8th episode with him and part of the Batman movie. Like, you think by now, like, there's a little bit of hope there's a little bit of love, he cares, maybe a little bit of empathy. No, he only cares about himself.
Every single good, in quotations, thing he has done throughout this entire series has been for him. No matter how much he'll like to make it seem like he's trying to be, like with the first couple episodes, it was like, wow, look at this Oz. Look at the way he's positively treating the sex workers, like everybody in his neighborhood. He's bringing Vic under his wing. No, every single thing is for his own personal, to fill his needs, to make someone proud of him, to make someone respect him, to make someone love him, because he craves that so much. And he doesn't crave real love. He doesn't crave mutual respect. He just wants that for him, and he will do whatever it takes to get that. Sometimes that comes off as helping other people, but it's just simply manipulating. It's simply transactional. It is only to acquire their love, their respect, their attachment towards him. And we get more of that later on in this episode as well. And there's another part that I find super interesting about what drives Sofia versus what drives Oz. And we get to see that later on in the episode where before their future meetup again, she's burning all of her dad's stuff. And he's yelling at his mom's unconscious body, tell me you're proud of me. Tell me you love me. I just want you to love me. Tell me you're proud of me. And it's such an interesting contrast how they both do these villainous things. And what drives Sofia is the hate for her father. And what drives Oz is what he believes is love for his mother, but it's just the need to be loved by elsewhere. And I thought they make such a perfect contrast between these two characters. But the way it's such a beautifully performed scene, but also so tough to watch, the way Sofia is just pitting Oz and his mom against each other and torturing them both, and he just won't break. He won't tell her the truth, no matter how much Francis is like, I know, like, I have known the entire time I was going to kill you. I was going to let Rex kill you for me, and instead I chose to use you your entire life to make my life better. I knew it all. And he's still like, no, this isn't true. I'm going to pretend this isn't true after. And it's just so wild to see the denial in full effect, no matter where the conversation happened. Like, the words being spoken do not seem to matter because he's just living in his own world.
He's living in his own world, and it's everything that, like, it's disassociation at its worst, right? Like, sometimes we disassociate to get away from a bad situation. He's disassociating to the point where he's just lied to himself, almost to the point where I don't even know if he he almost believes himself in his own lies. He's been doing it for so long that he truly doesn't believe that he murdered his brothers. He doesn't believe it anymore. He's like, oh, I wasn't even with them. You were, whatever. So it just shows why he's so despicable. And as I said, like, he was literally about to let Sofia's goons cut off his mom's finger. Just about to allow it, just so he can keep that perception in his own head alive. It's sociopathic.
It is. It's absolutely sociopathic. And it truly, it's been teased throughout the series about how by the end of the series, no, this is not an anti-hero. He will really be seen as a villain. And we haven't even gotten to his most villainous acts yet. But eventually what ends the stalemate is Francis straight up stabs Oz. She tries to kill him. She stabs him in the stomach. He survives it. You know,
because he's just the luckiest SOB in
all
of Gotham.
Penguin just survives, right? And he uses it as a distraction to shoot Sofia's goons, get out of there. Francis has a full-on stroke. This, I feel like it's really important to call back to the moments earlier in the season where she begs him, if my mind is gone, please pull the plug. Please end it. Like, I don't want to be alive in that sense. Please end it. And the way he acts throughout this episode towards her, like, she was not a good mom by any means. Horrific. Terrible. But geez, is that tough to watch, where we get the moment in the hospital where he's just screaming at her, like, you got to get up. Not because I miss you, Mom. Not because I love you, Mom. But because I need you to tell me you love me. And because I need you to tell me you're proud of me. I need the validation. That's all that matters to me. And Oz is broken until Vic picks him back up. Renzi Feliz gives his best performance of the entire series so far, I think. Victor Aguilar is just incredible. Shout out to our friends over at Phase Hero. They have him on to talk about the finale as we're recording this right now. And you can also check out my interview with Renzi Feliz talking about Victor Aguilar from the beginning of this series up on the Agents Fandom YouTube page. So check out that one from the beginning. You can check out theirs from the end. It's a nice little full circle. But Renzi has his best performance as Victor in this episode, and he picks Penguin up and he says, like, this is what you've done for me. He gives Penguin the validation he has been craving his entire life. It works. They have a great plan. Vic gets all the number 2s to rise up against the number 1s and the gangs throughout Gotham. Led by the triads, they fake turn himself in, and then Link, the number 2 for the triads, shoots their leader right in the head to take over, and Oz is back in control. They got Sofia right where they want him. And then it happens.
I gotta say, before any of this,
yeah,
shout out Christopher Milotti. Shout out the costume designer for that interrogation scene, by the way, because like the red scarf with the black dress. I was worried about her all episode, man. Like I was worried about Sofia the entire episode.
And so let's get to Sofia after Vic. I think I had it backwards in the rundown, but chronologically, the Vic stuff happens first. Penguin says, see ya. He killed him. He full on, they have their nicest moment.
The Sofia stuff actually happens first before Sofia.
Well, sorry, but like before we find out where she is.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to give that it's full time, and then we can talk about where she ends up. But the Vic stuff, Penguin, they have their nicest moment of the entire series. They bond, they share a beer. Vic calls them family, Oz calls him family, and Oz realizes that, well, if I have family, they can use it against me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to go it alone. I'm going to take the one person in the history of my entire sad little life that has truly loved and valued me. Kills him.
Mm-hmm.
See you later, Vic. His death has been foreshadowed with things like photos from earlier in the season with the Jason Todd-esque pipe there. And he is gone so far as of now.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he gets a Jason Todd-esque revival to go full on against the Penguin in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But a very, very sad end.
Call me in denial, TJ. Call me in denial. Call me crazy. Put on a tinfoil hat. I'm not so sure about this one. Look, if this is the way he goes, this is the way he goes. But man, we've been talking a while about this show and the Batman and going forward. Like, will we get a Robin? Will we get a Robin? Maybe. Maybe it's Vic who becomes Robin. Because who knows? I think his character is so interesting. And the way that at the end, after Oz chokes him out and leaves his body by the river, he doesn't throw his body into the river. He leaves his body there. I believe,
he takes his wallet. He takes his wallet so that he dies nameless.
Exactly. He's nameless. So have we seen in this show, correct me if I'm wrong, where like someone gets choked out and then is instantly like kind of revived like moments later? Has that happened in this show, or have I been watching too much television?
I think you've been watching too much television.
Okay, fine. So, but it's just, I could see somehow, like, let me give you something crazy. Penguin walks out, like, leaves his body there, and maybe around that same time, a black limo comes around the corner, and it's Alfred, who takes him and maybe finds a way to revive him, brings this boy into the mansion, and that's how we are able to get a different version of Robin, who's nameless. Again, call me crazy. Call me nuts. I have
Call me by my birth name, Robin. The Dark Knight Rises tease at the end. That's what this is reminding me of. You know I love a good theory. I can't buy into that one.
You can't buy into it? Do you think he's dead?
I think he's probably dead. If he's not, I don't think he would become a Robin type character. I think he would become like a Red Hood type figure to Oz as opposed to Batman, and Batman just has to deal with him because he's in Gotham and he's shooting a bunch of people and he's taking justice into his own hands. But I view it more as he would become a lethal anti-hero targeting Oz that Batman would have to deal with, as opposed to a literal Robin if he were to be revived.
That's fair. Again, I'm just like, I may be in denial here because I really liked Vic. I like this character. I could see him being the one who takes out Oz in the end, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because like I really hate Oz. I just want him to see him go down and like in his mind the worst way possible.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he does very much win his battles throughout these episodes, and he gets there without Vic. Vic is gone, at least for now, probably permanently, but at least for now. And poor Sofia, who graciously accepts death. She accepts her loss. She actively does not want to be a part of this life anymore. She just wants her revenge on Oz, then to get the hell out of there. When she loses, she graciously accepts death. She's willing to go. And Oz won't freaking let her.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, he sends her back to the one place that she would never want to return her to. Julian Rush goes too because he's a weirdo.
Freaking, there's weird shit going on with him, dude. Like, the fact that he returned, like, that's a power thing. That's weird behavior.
Yeah, that's real weird. But she gets a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to our guy, Ryan Cortero, here with the Agents of Fandom, because my goodness, was he just spot on with all of his predictions for this final episode. We highlighted one of them last week, and this week, like literally right before the episodes, he goes, I really hope we get to see some nod to Sofia Gigante and Selina Kyle being half sisters in the last episode. And what do we get, Damon? We get a note from Selina Kyle. And although Sofia looks absolutely distraught and just beaten, devastated there in Arkham, the message from Selina brings a smile to her face. And it brings a smile to most viewers' faces as well, because it increases the likelihood that Kristen Milotti will be back as Sofia Gigante for the Batman Part 2.
Hopefully. I hope so in some way, shape, or form, because Gotham has been building. And like my biggest worry, my biggest fear last week when we did this episode with Jamie was, man, I hope Sofia is still alive. And I could not see a way where she was still alive. This is so much worse of a like position for her to be in than just getting blasted in the back of the head by a gun. And that whole scene, by the way, was so beautifully shot. This cinematic of it, having the light from the other side of the bridge, and you're just almost waiting. I was expecting it to cut to black and you hear a gunshot, and instead it more was brought to white. The lightness of it all with the spotlight on it, and every little thing that Penguin was able to put out there and weasel his way into a councilman and connect all these dots, just total happenstance. Again, the luckiest SOB in Gotham is Oz Cobb, because he's able to be like, oh, we're going to connect this with this, this with this, this with this. Boom, my hand's off. I'm clean. This was all Sal's operation. And I'm just trying to help out Crown Point. I'm just trying to help out Crown Heights. Like, I'm just trying to help. And he's able to keep his hands, his little grubby hands, as clean as possible. Man, luckiest guy. But the whole thing with Sofia, I hope we see her again. But I'm trying to imagine where we'll go with the Batman 2, and we'll talk about it later, because we're getting so many potential players in that movie.
One of the ones that, although the theory didn't come to fruition, is our Eve Karlo sex worker Clayface theory. And it's not necessarily untrue. We saw her with lots of different disguises in episode 7. She ends the episode dancing with Vic, even after selling him out. And to me, that speaks to the potential Clayface of it all, with the literal, and like we've seen in Matt Reeves's universe, it wants to be grounded, it wants to be realistic. She probably wouldn't be a mud monster as much as a master of disguise. Yeah. And we know that she hates Oz at this point. She found out about everything that he's done, and she sells him out. She doesn't like him anymore, but she's still there with him, Stoneface, acting like all is well. Maybe speaking to her abilities as a master of disguise a little bit. So the Clayface one is still on the table, but we really see Oz fully morph into the Penguin at the end of this episode. He gets the tuxedo going. He's got the top hat. He's got his full-on comic/cartoon look. He is aesthetically white and black, looking like the Penguin. He has his poor mother, barely conscious, half brain dead, still able to clearly see what is happening and understand what is happening by the tear we see running down her face. She's unable to she doesn't have control of her executive functions, but she's still aware of what's going on around her, just like a worst case type of scenario. And Oz wins. He fully wins, but in a way that makes you feel so uncomfortable with him as a villain, until we see the episode conclude with not just the call, but a warning. The bat signal ends shining over Gotham just when it feels like the Penguin has stomped out all of his foes. There's no more Maronis. There's no more Falcones. Sofia's in Arkham. Even Vic is no longer with him. Who could stop him as he begins his new empire? The Batman. Which I'm sure it will lead directly into a Batman Part 2. It's an perfect ending to this series. A perfect ending. There was something, though, that I didn't see until after you pointed it out to me from a tweet afterwards. And you brought up about how there's a lot of potential different players leading into the Batman Part 2. This directly could be one of those factors involved. And I think it's very interesting because we've teased it in the first movie. It has been theorized that it'll be a very big part of the second movie going forward already. So this does fit. And it also fits. Oz's rise to power isn't just him, starting a new Iceberg Lounge. He's got power. He's got influence with the government. He's trying to become kind of like a Kingpin and Daredevil Born Again-esque figure where he's in the light. He's not hiding in the shadows anymore. He has other people doing his dirty work, and he is in the light. And in comics and in various stories, there have been a group of elites within Gotham who control things and who have been a foe of the Batman. Who are the Court of Owls? Who?
Oh boy, the Court of Owls. Yeah, so in this episode, for those listening in, when they go into the courtroom, the very aptly named courtroom, the curtains are draped in such a way that they resemble owls all around it. And, could this just be an ode, a nod to the Court of Owls? Like, we've seen odes and nods to other figureheads within Gotham and Batman lore and
Karlo,
comics.
Karlo, the last name of Clayface being Eve Karlo.
Exactly. So, did we exactly get a mud monster? No, we got a woman who is clearly a master of disguise, who has a bunch of different wigs and is able to play different parts all around the city and play different parts in her role to Oz by the end. So, yeah. Quarter vowels possibly showing up in the Batman part 2? Maybe. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of different potential players. We had a Joker cameo in that first movie that we suspect will be playing a role again. Potential of Hush. Maybe they brought up the anti-corruption force, task force in this episode. So Harvey Dent could be playing a role in this. Like the options that they can go in the second movie are jokingly endless, but they have a lot to pick from that they already set up. And that's not even just including the fact that, like, the Penguin is easily going to be a factor in that second movie. It's already been confirmed, I believe, that he's going to be in that movie in at least several scenes and potentially in a project afterwards as well. So they have a lot of different avenues that they can go with in this second movie. And now the Court of Owl is very seemingly, very appropriately teased with owl, silhouettes within the courtroom of Gotham.
Here's my question for you in terms of who will be involved in the Batman Part 2. Do you think we see Kristen Melody back as Sofia Gigante? And will she even potentially be not an antagonistic figure towards Batman, but potentially somewhat on his side alongside Catwoman?
I don't know if she'll be like directly on his side, but I think
Specifically, like maybe she helped him take down Oz.
maybe. I think that would be like her biggest motive if she isn't mentally just broken by then. Like we said, she did, you know, break a bit of a smile when she was reading that letter from Selina. I think we will see her in at least a scene. Maybe Selena will try to visit her at prison very quickly, and it will be a little bit of a back and forth, possibly trying to explain to Selena that Oz is really behind the underground corruption of it all, and maybe just warn her to be like, never trust this man type of thing.
I could see it being like Bruce goes to Selena, needs some help with some information about the Penguin, and she goes, I know somebody you can talk to. And he goes and visits Arkham Asylum and meets Sophia there, and they have a little heart to heart about Oz, and she tells him how to take him down, what he's been up to, etc., etc. I hope we get her in Batman Part 2 nonetheless. Like the Batman Part 2, which has a lot of different players potentially coming into play and a lot of different factors, a lot of different good content. I don't know where I'm going with this. I tried to have a cool segue and I lost it. So do we coming up because there's so much great content coming up. Like I mentioned, the month of November is pretty chill from a content standpoint. We got a little bit of a break here. We're going to play some games. We're going to hopefully have some interviews. We're going to do some drafts. Later on this week, Damon and I will be back with a show breaking down the vast different variety of trailers that we've gotten, because Marvel, Star Wars, DC, etc. There's been so many great trailers that we've gotten over the last couple days. So we're going to break those down later this week. And coming up in the future, I believe the next two shows we're going to be covering, hopefully back with some live shows here, are the Skeleton Crew and Creature Commandos. And then coming up in the new year, there's going to be so much great stuff with Daredevil Born Again, Invincible, Peacemaker, and so much more. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. Damon, do we have anything special coming up on the Comic Corner?
Yes. Also, don't forget What If, because what if that whole show ends in an incursion like I've been hoping it will? On the Comic Corner, we have some great interviews lined up this week, so keep an eye out for those. And speaking of Batman, speaking of 6'6" behemoth Batman, the second issue of Absolute Batman #2 is out this week, so go pick it up. Go read it. If you somehow manage to not get the first issue, I think they're on like reprint number 5, 6. It's crazy. They're reprinting this thing left and right because the demand for it is so high. Go pick it up. It's great. And then also go pick up all the other Absolute books as well, because they are 3 for 3 with them. It's Again, fantastic. And yeah, if you want more Penguin, there is an Oswald Cobblepot in that book, and Bruce may have grown up to be childhood besties with him, and a bunch of other rogue type characters.
Very, very interesting. Make sure you check that out, and check Damon, Fat Thor, AF, and the whole crew out on the Comic Corner podcast on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page and wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. Follow the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your socials, at Agents Fandom on TikTok, Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. Thanks so much to everyone who joined us this week. Hit the like button on your way out. And like I mentioned, Damon and I will be back later this week to break down all the wonderful trailers we've gotten. The Thunderbolts, Captain America, Brave New World, so much more. Thank you, everyone who tuned in, and we will see you next time. Peace.